18. The importance of innovation and how to do it. Once I was invited to speak at a manager's training seminar at a daily newspaper in Seoul. I was asked to give a one-hour speech on the subject, corporate management and my managerial philosophy. Rarely was a business person invited to speak before a newspaper group, and I would have to be careful when speaking to such an audience. Out of courtesy, if nothing else, however, I found it difficult to turn down the invitation. So I talked for an hour on my thoughts concerning corporate management. And what I said was quite compatible with the trends for managerial reform at the time. Toward the end, one manager abruptly asked, "If you were managing a newspaper, what would you do to innovate?" I had always been an outsider to the newspaper business, and it was difficult enough going to the seminar to make the speech. To be hit with such an unexpected question completely flustered me. But something came to mind, and that was Kababu, a highly popular comic strip on contemporary society, a strip I greatly enjoyed. I had observed that most people first read the leading story on the front page, and if there was not anything else of particular interest, they quickly turned to the social pages at the back of the paper. And they're the first thing to attract attention. Is this comic strip in the upper corner of the inside back page? Advertisers always want the places that catch the reader's eye. Consequently, prices for such spots correspond to their popularity. Every time I read the comic strip, I thought, like a business person. Since people have such reading habits, placing an ad in the comic strip section would naturally draw a lot of attention. It would really work if the comic ran for 5 days, and then you placed an ad on the 6th day in the same slot. If that could not be done, then lengthening the comic strip from 4 blocks to 5, and putting an ad in the middle of the strip would work well. Such a precious spot on the Kabalu comic strip would no doubt be the envy of every business person. So I said this in response to the manager's question. Not too long after that, I noticed the Kabalu comic strip had been lengthened to 5 blocks with an advertisement in the 5th one. Innovation is essential to life, and it is not as hard as you might think. That is something I stress wherever I go. The problem is not the innovation itself, but whether or not you want to innovate. If you look carefully at really worthwhile inventions, most of them are actually based on quite simple ideas, which often bring about great results. Innovation plays a highly important role in corporate management as well. Innovation has played a prominent role in the history of mankind. It begins with the determination of a creative person to break with contemporary reality by making something new. I have always emphasized the importance of being creative, because creative people make history and keep the world moving. Developing creativity begins with asking questions about the present situation. Have I tried my best? Is the current situation ideal? Can we make a better product? Isn't there a better method? Such probing stimulates your latent creativity. The more you probe, the greater your results will be. When I first went to work after college, I was responsible for dealing with a bank on behalf of a new company, Hansung Industrial. It was rather easy work. All I had to do was submit company documents to the bank, which either accepted them for higher approval or rejected them. If the papers were rejected, the company would make the necessary changes, and I simply resubmitted them. The person who held this position before I joined, the company had a tough time with the job, however. He spent much of the day going back and forth between the company and the bank. Drawing up the documents took quite a bit of time, and if they were rejected, he lost even more time. So shortly after I took the job, I carefully watched all processes to discover problems. I became a troubleshooter. I decided that the first step was to establish a good relationship with the women at the bank, who accepted the documents because it was up to them to decide whether or not the papers went on to get higher approval. If by chance there was a minor mistake, the women could correct it and send the papers on. But there was also the problem of competition. Numerous companies were submitting similar documents, and the lower your paper in the pile, the longer your company had to wait for approval. At the time, we had a storeroom filled with imported Italian blouse fabric that was not selling, and the person responsible for it was not taking care of the situation. So I put the two together. The fabric was just sitting there, and the women at the bank might like the material. I figured that by selling the material to them cheaply, I would actually be making a profit for the company in more ways than one. Each day the fabric sat in the storehouse. The company was losing not only potential profit, but also potential interest on the profit as well. The fabric made a hit with the women at the bank, and they even got their friends to buy it. They liked the new fabric as well as the price, and at the same time we were clearing out the company warehouse. From then on, the papers I brought to the bank got top priority. The second problem was that I was still stuck with a lot of paperwork that I thought could be reduced by half. This also was easier to solve than I thought. The types of documents were limited, and only a few figures would vary with each document. All the other things were fixed: the company's name, the applicant's seal, the addressee non foreign, the dabriti, and so forth. So whenever I had any spare time, I prepared as many documents as possible ahead of time. All the company had to do was fill in the figures and dates. Things had improved, but I was still going to the bank several times a day. By probing, I discovered that only 2 dispatches a day were necessary, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. The person who had preceded me on the job had never taken the time to notice that documents submitted to the bank in the morning were approved in the late afternoon, and those submitted in the afternoon were approved the next morning. Unaware of this, he had been spending the whole day running back and forth to the bank with a different document each time. He was merely doing what he had been taught by his predecessor or superior, and he had never thought of innovating to save time, money, and even his own shoe leather. I decided to change our work pattern to fit the bank's schedule. Only a month after I had the job, I was promoted and praised as some kind of genius. At the time, a promotion was considered a real feat for a new employee, but the success of my debut was due only to my ability to perceive problems and to improve the existing situation. As the years passed, I continued to sharpen my problem-solving abilities and to improve my capabilities at innovating. I can confidently say that the ability to make Daewoo grow the way it did was due to managerial innovation in both large and small ways.